Ladies and gentlemen, I am Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It is August 5th, 2022. This is your daily Ukraine update, and we are going to be breaking down if maybe the momentum has shifted to the Ukrainian side. Let's get into what I'm talking about. Okay, so when we look at the map, first off, there's very few changes today, but the few changes I think are significant. First, you can see here that there's some clarification to the front northeast of Kherson. You can see up here that in this pretty busy looking front, you've got some changes, some clarifications that Ukrainian forces have managed to push Russians back behind this river here. If we zoom out several days, you can see that back a week ago, this was all contested and has since been secured by Ukrainian forces, probably in an effort to do to this village here, maybe what the Russians did in Lysychansk, right? Isolate, create a salient, and then cut off and eliminate the forces. This, of course, is very small, so it's likely Russians will make the call to withdraw from this village. You also, of course, are seeing no updates to the Kherson front here. Again, this isn't really shocking because there's not been much official notification of changes to the Kherson front, but there's a lot, certainly, of rumors of Ukrainian forces pushing ever closer to Kherson. When we look at Donetsk, right, the city in the presumed capital city of the Donetsk People's Republic, we can see that there's also been fairly limited action, but the action we are seeing is Ukraine pushing back Russian forces, right? Out here, you've got some clarification that instead of controlling the large chunk of this major highway, Russia only controls a small salient of not really any major significance. Now, we can also see at Russia's primary combat zone. This is taking Bakhmut is their number one priority. They've been pushing towards it for a long time, and you can see here that momentum here has largely stalled. There was some advancements towards Zaitsev, but now they're just sort of stuck here, and we've seen Russian momentum slow over time. Their gains look smaller and smaller. They're taking smaller and smaller bites. They need longer and longer between those gains to refit and re-prepare to push. And when we look at the conflict updates for today, we see that it's probably because Russia has had to rob Peter to pay Paul. They're transferring personnel to Kherson and to the Zaporizhia Oblasts, away from, it assumes, their efforts to take Sloviansk and Siversk, which for weeks there has been no progress on those fronts. They're also, of course, redeploying military equipment to Crimea in order to bolster their forces for the expected Ukrainian push on Kherson. Russian forces also have suspended offensive operations in Kharkiv city, but this is all in all a sign that Russia's forces are at their max. They're stretched as thin as they can be, and they are having to pull away from their main effort to reinforce defensive operations. And what this says is that something called initiative in U.S. military doctrine is sort of like who has first mover advantage, or who chooses things about what direction the fight is going to go. This is usually so for example, Russia, for the first 90 plus days of the war, had all the initiative. They chose to invade at Kiev, they chose to invade through Crimea, they chose to invade through the east, and by being able to make those choices, and then Ukraine had to react to it. That's what it means to have the initiative. Now, Russia seems to be making very few tactical choices, and is instead forced to make choices, or forced to allocate their remaining combat power. But they don't have enough spare power for flexibility. It's sort of like, imagine if your rent is due, your rent is $2,000 and you have $2,000 in your account. You don't get to choose what you spend money on. You're going to spend it on rent. This is sort of where Russian forces are. In order to blunt the Ukrainian offensive in Kherson and hold the line, Russia has to use basically every available troop. And that means that they have no spare troops to make choices. Do they want to push towards Bakhmut? Do they want to flank around Bakhmut? Where do they want to seize? What's their priority? They've lost the ability to set those priorities. Those priorities are being set for them based on the things they cannot fail. They cannot lose Kherson. They cannot have reversals in Lysychansk. So it means that the Ukrainian forces, you may start to see them seize small bits of territory and slowly take larger and larger bites if indeed we're seeing momentum swing in their favor. So I think this is an optimistic situation for Ukraine, but again, right now it appears that things are settling into a stalemate, as they have been for several weeks since the fall of Lysychansk. But I think you're starting to see the Ukrainian side just start to a little bit gain some tactical advantages. Anyway, guys, as always, thank you for joining me. Of course, if you want to see some breakdowns of combat videos that are just a little too spicy for me to put on YouTube, you want to become a member of the Patreon. Thanks to my Lieutenant tier patrons. I'll catch you guys in the next one.